Over the past few years, something profound has been happening inside enterprise networks and infrastructure teams. Automation isn't just speeding up tasks anymore, it's reshaping the very nature of how digital systems operate. AI driven engines are now monitoring, optimizing, and even resolving issues before a human ever logs in. And that shift is accelerating faster in 2026 than at any point in the last decade. For generations, the identity of the network engineer was built around mastery of the command line. The command line interface, or CLI, wasn't just a tool, it was a badge of honor, a symbol of deep technical craftsmanship. But today, that model is giving way to something entirely different. We're moving from hands on configuration to system level coordination, where engineers guide intelligent platforms rather than manually steering every device. And with that evolution comes a cultural tension that every technical team can feel. On one side, there's a very clear fear. If AI can automate the work that I've spent years perfecting, what happens to me? On the other side, there's a genuine excitement. If AI can take the repetitive tasks off my plate, what new possibilities does that unlock for me? This episode begins right at the heart of that tension because the truth is, we're not watching the end of the engineer. We're watching the role transition from something bigger, more strategic, and more impactful than ever before. Joining me today on The Revolution is guest John Capobianco. John, welcome.
Jim, that was a really great. I got tingly. My hairs are all standing up. That was an incredible introduction, and what a way to summarize this revolution we've been going through. And I love that the name of this show itself is the Digital Revolution. I think it's important for us to recognize that this is going to be looked back at historically, I think, like other human revolutions, the agricultural revolution, the industrial revolution. This is a new agentic revolution that's happening right now, right? And I'm excited to be here. I understand that it is new, and it's less than 4 years old. Let's say this whole idea of generative AI, but the train has moved so fast in that short period of time. I think it's important for us to have these discussions.
Perfect. And I appreciate that. Yeah, the revolution is gaining speed, it's growing, and everyone's involved. And I think it's important to have guests like yourself on the revolution to talk about everything that we're seeing coming immediately and down the road here. Before we get into our conversation, could you do a favor and kind of provide a little bio about yourself? Who you are, what you do, and all that kind of good stuff.
Sure. So my name is John Capobianco, and I live outside of Ottawa in Canada. I'm currently the head of AI and DevRel at iTential, who is a network automation platform and an orchestration platform, who's embracing artificial intelligence in the form of flow agents and flow AI agents. Prior to my time at iTential, I was with Selector AI as the head of DevRel there for about 18 months. Cisco, before them, for about 3 years in an artificial intelligence role. And prior to Cisco, I was the senior network architect for the Parliament of Canada for about 9 years. And that's really when the journey started for me, Jim, specifically network automation. So we found that the greenfield environment that we had built at Parliament, building and assembling the network was one challenge, but operating it was a completely different challenge. And we realized that we were understaffed, or at least very stretched in terms of staff. Velocity was slow, and we needed to find a new approach. Around the same time, Ansible became popular in the network automation world, and even some different Python libraries. And that's when it really all started for me, is when I started to do things programmatically in the network using, infrastructure as code and YAML files and Python files. And when ChatGPT, I applied for an API key to ChatGPT in December of 2022. So this is it'll be my 4th year of doing this come December. But I connected a particular Python automation framework called Cisco pyATS. I connected that to the ChatGPT 3.5 API, specifically around testing interfaces. And it was like, when it came back and said, yes, these three interfaces have problems, and here's why they have problems, and here's what you can do about those problems. Jim, it felt like Gandalf when he touched the ring. Okay, I was sitting by the fire with my pipe, kind of just muttering to myself, precious, pyATS, artificial intelligence. It had a profound impact on me to see this artificial intelligence, and I can explain why. So, not to boast or anything, but I am the co-author of the pyATS Cisco Press book, and I'm one of the experts who use this automation platform. And prior to testing interfaces, the old way used to be writing a test per use case, and to test interfaces on, say, a Cisco device, it was like 19 to 30 different discrete, handwritten, brittle, fragile, bespoke tests given a certain platform and given certain variables. It was hundreds of lines of Python. Now, it was doable and it was very valuable once you had written that code. But for me, instead, just to take the payload from the show interface command and send it to the AI and say, tell me if everything's healthy, without writing tests, without writing any of that code, and for it to come back with a high quality answer, really changed my thinking. It changed my thinking all those years and months ago. It really had a profound impact. So that's sort of where my origin story is with artificial intelligence.
That's a great point. We really think about with network engineers, and we look back. You had mentioned a 4-year period. You go back prior to 4 years, maybe you go back maybe, 5 years to a decade. A network engineer, their role is much different. Can you talk a little bit about, what that network engineer was, let's say in your early part of your career? What were you doing back then as a network engineer before AI?
Yeah, so there was a lot of, everything was done at the command line. So you had to have a broad knowledge of different show commands, configuration commands, modes of operation in a device, one device's version of the commands compared to another device's version of the commands. They weren't uniform, multi-vendor, logging in and configuring things from scratch. Usually how we used to do it was like a notepad file per device. And in that notepad file, you would have your procedures and your configuration commands and everything all drafted up per device, per file. And some operator would log into the device and apply the config. And then testing was a whole separate round of things that was done after the fact. Everything took a lot of time. Everything had friction. You had very small contained change windows to achieve big goals. Sometimes it might be SWIM, software image management, just upgrading a router's iOS device or whatever. Sometimes it's configuration changes. Sometimes it's reacting to an external event. Some component fails, some wire gets cut, some power gets lost, right? There's external factors around the network that sometimes you have to react to. But artificial intelligence has really accelerated all of those things. And I really do try to build myself like digital coworkers or digital subordinates in a way, where my expertise of 25 years of doing network automation can be poured into as skills, as model context protocol tools, as retrieval augmented generation. There's a variety of ways me as a human can translate that knowledge into a digital coworker that then I can just ask to do the thing or the status of the thing or the health of the thing in natural language, right? It's just another layer of abstraction on top of other layers of abstraction that we've gone through as humans, right?
Yeah. Yeah, John, I appreciate you sharing, that those genesis points, where you've seen and experienced the automation along with, software defined networks and artificial intelligence really becoming to reshape your responsibilities. And I love the analogy regarding Gandalf the first time he actually physically touched the One Ring. I think that's a great way to kind of frame everything when it comes to the fundamental change and how everything was evolving because of AI. Now let's talk about the new role. We have the aspect of a network engineer, and you're what you had presented to me when we were talking prior to the podcast episode here was that network engineer is more of an AI orchestrator, and that role was kind of evolved in that aspect of it. And I want to talk a little bit about what that AI orchestrator actually does. You know, you're moving away, and you think about it, we're moving away from that device level troubleshooting. Now it's into managing intelligent systems that are, and they self optimize and everything like that. And also, I think looking at how AI also, how it overlooks and watches, workflows. You're going to have anything from, policy engines to autonomous network functions and things like that. Can you talk a little bit about that new role of the AI orchestrator, what they do?
Well, I think it is a human resources problem as much as it is a technology problem. Meaning, if I were going to build a team of people under me right now, and let's just say I had unlimited budget and I could build experts to do certain things, how would I organize them so that I, as the human, could just kind of be on the loop or in the lead of these agents, where I'm still in charge of them as a fleet, as a workforce, as a force multiplier? But they are autonomous, but they do still have enough free reign to be valuable to me. Some might do configuration, some might do compliance, some might do security, each of them with their own set of tools and their own set of skills. And you maybe have a supervisor agent that you report to, the one interface with a human, and that supervisor agent has a fleet of other agents under it. I'm looking at the current present state of agents right now. 6 weeks ago, or before OpenClaw, I'm not sure if you've been following the OpenClaw craze, but Claude, and he got sued, so he changed the name, and now it's become one of the number one GitHub repositories on the internet today. And there's 1.8 million OpenClaw agents on Earth. That should open people's eyes to this new idea of an agentic era and the digital revolution that we're living in. I think we are the last generation. 2026 is probably the last generation of purely biological beings in the workforce, particularly in IT. I think Gartner pegs it at 70% of IT-related activities will be AI augmented by 2030. So that's only 4 years away. They believe 70% of all things done in IT will have a component of artificial intelligence being involved in that activity. And that might even be a timid number, right? That might be 2028, right? Who knows, right? But the way things are moving, and I still think it's very democratic. Right, that 1.5 million agents, that's just curious people, right? They just followed the README and set up their own AI agent. It wasn't very hard for them. People of all walks of life have agents running now. It's not restricted to people who are network engineers, right?
Yeah, and right now, we're really faced with a huge cultural shift that's happening with inside technical teams. Going to ask, your experience and also too, what your ideas and also too thoughts are related to when it comes to technical teams. We're seeing the reaction of, when AI begins taking over all the routine tasks, you say like with the IT function and stuff like that. How are teams currently in business organization, even into government side, how are they reacting to AI taking over these routine tasks that they have?
Well, I think it rhymes with what we did in network automation, meaning there was a big fear and an immediate backlash to network automation that you're going to automate yourself out of a job. That sort of has hovered over network automation for a very long time, this idea that you could automate yourself out of a job. Personally speaking, every time I automated something, even big things, there was no impact that they didn't suddenly let go of me, right? They didn't say, well, thanks for writing this code and you can, we don't need you anymore. I was actually always rewarded for automating. What else can you automate? Where are the other opportunities? Where else do you think this could go? And it sort of became John was sort of the one in charge of that code base, and he was valuable to the organization now because he was one of the few that understood the new network automation code that we were doing. Not to say I hoarded that knowledge. I had training sessions and other people were aware, and those people became more valuable as well. I think if it's John's agent that people are talking to, John is still a very valuable person if he's the one building and maintaining and augmenting and responding to demand to improve that agent that he's built for the enterprise, right? You might have an agent that you put in Slack that people can just talk to. How's the health of the Wi-Fi in Atlanta? And that agent just answers them with the data that John built into the capabilities of the agent. You made the good point that it's a shift, right? They're now digital architects around agents. And can I, as a human with the experience and the certifications and the stuff I've done in networking, make a super quality agent so that people don't have to bother me as a human? It's not about bothering me, but it's about, could I publish that in our Teams directory, our, whatever platform it is that we all communicate with? Could I give it an email address? Could it tap into my ServiceNow tickets where I have a category in ServiceNow that says agent? And if that category is selected, that ticket goes to the agent first for triage. That's how we're going to augment things, Jim.
Yeah, it's as I mentioned earlier, it's a cultural shift, but really it's a mindset shift from protecting my job to elevating my impacts. And you've definitely capitalized on and endowed into that. Now, again, I do recognize the importance of psychological safety, when it comes to one's career and job. And I do know that, AI being a disruptor, and it is assisting in a lot in operations. But I think when it comes to leadership, both on the IT side and also the corporate organizational side, and even in government itself, what are some of the recommendations you would have for leaders to kind of help reduce that fear and really kind of build some confidence in this new model that we're seeing evolve in front of our eyes?
So I think that it's everyone's. So it's so early, Jim. It's so early that it's still an opportunity for everyone listening to this, let's say, to emerge as an AI superhero in their organization. Right? If you bring the hardest questions with some answers, right? Why aren't we using AI yet? Because we can do it on-prem securely with open source models, or we have an agreement with Anthropic or with Azure or with Google or with whoever, right? So how can I make an impact on my team to be the champion of AI and learn how to use the tools and learn how to solve some problems with it, and have meetings about it and share that knowledge and share it with your leaders. Leaders right now, the best thing they can do is empower people, because you hate to see the progression go from it's not allowed at all, AI, to highly restricted use cases, you can use it, to actually it's generally available for employees to use, to it's highly encouraged that you use this tool, all the way to you must use AI. That's sort of the spectrum that we're sort of racing through as enterprises. And now you have to align in your mind where your enterprise is at, because eventually it's going to become an expectation that you're using the AI that the company's invested in, or that the government body's invested in, or the tools that they're spending the money on tokens. They want to augment the workforce. They want to increase your productivity, make your job easier, give you access to better sources of data. So everyone's job is going to change. And I think that's sort of that spectrum of no AI allowed at all to you must be using AI, and somewhere in between is what we face right now as humans.
Yeah, I do agree completely with that. Let's talk about the practical challenges that engineers today face during this transition. And when we think about the accelerated evolution that's going on right now related to AI, is network engineers, or however you identify in that IT sphere, it is very difficult as humans to let go of what used to be those old habits, writing code and everything like that. And also, too, I think when it comes to really accepting that you need to trust in AI, especially related to things that you're going to be doing with it for it to give you recommendations or even automation and things like that. What are some of the practical challenges above and beyond those two that you think that engineers are facing in this transition?
So networks have to be stable. Stability is always going to take precedence over innovation on networks because of their criticality, because things like 911 ride on them, because security cameras and phones are on them, because that's the way everything in the world is accessible, is through their IP address. So I don't mean to be hard on network engineers that maybe haven't done automation yet or haven't started AI yet. I'm not judging them. I understand the situation they're in and that they don't have the luxury to innovate. It's more of a science than an art. Whereas the world of computer programming and application development, you have a little bit more leeway and flexibility there. It's more about design decisions. With a network and with infrastructure, right, everything rides on that network. So what if we're not using AI, right? Are the packets flowing? But like everything else, there are huge advantages and there's huge. I just did a demo right now. I just got off of a call with a demo where you open up a ServiceNow ticket. I sort of alluded to this, and you mentioned that an AI should triage it. It triggers an agent that connects to the device and does the thing and runs the tests and comes back with the report in ServiceNow, updating it live, right, with enriched text and full test results and recommendations on how to solve the problem within minutes of the ticket being opened and without a human being bothered whatsoever. Right now, I think that is remarkable. And it's read-only, and it's safe, and it's human on the loop. It's all the wonderful things we'd ever want. Imagine starting with triage, with tickets that come in, and those tickets just get triaged by AI. Yes, most of them are still going to filter up to a human to resolve them. Maybe that's your next step, is classifying what tickets resolution could be handled by an agent safely or with minimal risk. Are there certain things like shutting a port or adding a route or doing whatever that would remediate the problem that you have the AI do, right? So we as humans are going to have to start moving into the business of building these agents to do this plumbing, right? I don't think we as humans need to worry about memorizing show commands and memorizing the nuances of the CLI. There's certain things I think we can abstract to human language.
Yeah, and I think also too, you kind of keyed on another challenge, the aspect of when it comes to the tools and the resources out there, if you're not really educating, informing, and enlightening yourself on what's available out there, these platforms are evolving, rapidly. I go back and look at the beginning of, the digital revolution as a podcast is in the third season to see back when I first started those first episodes of what was available out there related to AI and see just in 2.5 years later, roughly where things are today, it's just like light years difference. One other thing I wanted to ask you, related to on the network side, and this is something that people ask occasionally. I'll get this question where you have a lot of companies that still have legacy systems. It's kind of like in the Dilbert thing where they want, the executives want to keep the old analog system and connect the digital system to the analog system and have one big, massive data system. When it comes to working with executives and things like that who really want to have some aspect of legacy with these next generation AI things, how do you recommend coordinating that with the network people in working with the executives, maybe at their companies or their organizations?
Well, I think there's AI for networks,
Mhm.
right? Which is sort of what I'm in the realm of using these tools to interface with networks. And then there's networks for AI, which is sort of a different discussion, building the backbones and building the hyperscaled GPU farms and the back-end networks and fabrics and some of the new protocols. So there's a lot to consider as an executive, whether or not you need to start investing in GPUs and racks of new equipment and the network expertise required to hyperconnect all of that, or if you're just going to consume, and do inference where you maybe don't need those GPUs, right? The other thing is, in terms of legacy networks, I'm hoping we're approaching the era where at least all of the network equipment out there has REST conf capability, where you can use REST APIs and Yang models to interface with the network equipment as a standard. Most network equipment also supports things like pyATS parsers. It is multi-vendor and it will work across a wide variety of equipment to turn the show commands into structured JavaScript object notation. And that's a big key. And it's been a big key for my success with AI is not just sending raw text and raw command line output copied and pasted, but parsing it into structured JSON. Because as far as the LLM is concerned, it can read JSON universally. It doesn't make any difference that it happens to be network key value pairs, right? It's just structured data that it understands. So my quality was really good because I was using and still use that structured JSON to improve the inference, right? So as long as your platforms can support either parsing of some kind or a REST interface, I don't know, now legacy, a system that's 20 years old, it should still have some of those capabilities. I don't think that we should dismiss, previous generations of hardware from being able to use AI to manage them.
And we've talked a lot about the challenges and where things are kind of headed for AI augmented engineers. Now I think we definitely need to talk about the skill set. So when we're looking at core competencies, some of the things I threw out were automation, scripting, data literacy, model awareness, and also systems design. Are there other core competencies that I just didn't mention that are important to an AI augmented engineer?
So I think that less and less we're going to be worried about Python and or Go or Rust or C++ or programming languages.
Mm-hmm.
I think that something that most should start paying attention to is something known as spec-driven development, SDD. And there's a GitHub repository to get you started. There's lots of information on the internet about this. And it harkens back to TDD, test-driven development, but it's spec-driven development. And the spec files are just natural language markdown files. There's a structure to this, though. And that's how I think systems are going to be built moving forward. So network engineers need to start to become very proficient at writing specifications that an LLM is going to turn into applications or into networks, in my case, or into infrastructure. And it's perfectly aligned with network infrastructure because network infrastructure has always been spec-driven development. We've always used specification files of a kind when we design and architect these networks. So we can take those architecture specifications and turn them into something that generates the configs using the LLM and this spec-driven development approach. So you might be hearing this for the first time here. I think that's going to become a critical skill to the AI augmented engineer of the future, is being able to interface with an LLM through specification files.
Very good. Looking at those core competencies, obviously those are very critical, but an AI augmented engineer is going to become more visible, more front and center. So what I highly recommend engineers that are looking at the aspect of AI is you got to work on your soft skills. You got to be a good communicator. You have to be able to do cross-functional collaboration. And you also have to work on the strategic thinking aspect of yourself, because you're going to be called on to do a lot very different and unique things, expanding and going above and beyond what a normal legacy engineer would when it comes to network. I also think that you have to have a level of curiosity and adaptability. As you mentioned earlier, that aspect of curiosity and adaptability is going to matter more, because it's not about memorizing commands anymore, writing code, memorizing commands and things like that. Question I have for you related to here we are in 2026. How can engineers build a personal learning roadmap for their future? What would you recommend as a roadmap?
Well, I would augment that. Honestly, I know it sounds funny in a way, but I would use AI to augment that story. And I would, in particular, look at either ChatGPT 5.2, Gemini 3.1, or Claude 4.6, any of those at all. And honestly, be honest with yourself, be honest with it. Lay out your goals for year 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? What you want to achieve, where you want to go, where you are at right now, what skills you don't have, and work with the AI to develop that plan. Now, 5 years is a very long time, right? I would even say a 1 year plan where in a year, could you develop an application using AI, right? Could you actually build something? And a year even is long. In this rapid era, it's probably days away from you starting your journey and actually having a hello world application. And try to find something that will improve your life. Could I make an AI agent that can check the health of my network device, send me a Slack message, send me an email, run tests, generate configs, whatever it is that you do on a day-to-day basis, right? Just think of the top 5 things that maybe you could offload to an agent. Are there good candidates for things that you could maybe truly yourself write the agent to offload that work using your own domain-specific knowledge? I would say yes. I would say everyone listening to this probably has 5 things a week that they could offload to an agent with a high degree of success.
So we've talked about the importance and obviously the skill set, and also to the important elements related to AI, an AI augmented engineer. Now, I think it's important to kind of move towards the leadership that obviously is going to be interfaced with these AI augmented engineers, because they're going to be the enablers of the transformation. One of the things that a lot of consultants, but also to subject matter experts related to AI augmentation, they're pushing really hard out there to create that culture, the mindset that businesses today need to really look at this AI enabling, not just as like, running kind of we're going to run a pilot, to look at this as an opportunity for them to really grow the enterprise and to take off a lot of those safeguards. And what I mean by that is that you should want to have failure happen, because you're going to have a better outcome. If you have sometimes missteps that lead to a better outcome, it's going to be better for the company. Another area, they need to really invest more in the training, even mentorship. John's like someone like yourself is an incredible mentor, but have that structure of upskilling paths, not only for AI augmented engineers or engineers that are in training to become that, but also others that will work in and around and collaborate with them to really have that understanding of AI. You had said earlier, John, about HR, about, related to more of the job descriptions and the career side of it and everything like that. There has to be a career path that's established for AI augmented roles. Let me ask you this, how can leaders, what would you recommend for a model related to their behavior when it comes to, having their teams understand that we want you to adopt and to implement AI? What would you recommend as a model for those leaders, business
So I
leaders?
think I think business leaders, the number one thing that they need to define is this idea of responsibility. Who's responsible ultimately if the AI gets it wrong? Is it the person who wrote the code? Is it the person who wrote the agent? Is it the team behind the project? Is it the LLM who hallucinated and we blame the partner or the model provider? That is something we need to sort out. So that way individual developers feel that the company supports them in exploring these solutions without maybe the finger pointing associated with, well, John's agent did X, Y, and Z in the database or something, right? Clear path for success. Again, it rhymes with network automation. Do this offline. Do this in a virtual environment. Do it in a physical lab. Do it anywhere but production first, and you learn your lessons in those lab type environments, right? Don't do shadow AI. Bring your concerns to the company, right? We need an approved model. We need API keys issued by the company, paid for by the company, supported by the company for us to develop with, right? Don't spend the $20 a month and use your personal ChatGPT API key to get some of this done as a shortcut, right? You actually have to have those difficult conversations with your leadership. And leadership, you need to be thinking about this in the reverse way. Have you made AI accessible to your teams? Are there guardrails? Are there governance? Are there training? Do you go through the half-day exercise of here's the model that's available to you, here's how to get an API key responsibly, here's what's in, here's what's out, here's what documents are approved for RAG, here's what documents are sensitive and not approved. All of that. There's lots of opportunity here for leadership to do exactly that, to be leaders in how their companies move forward with AI. And I think all of those things will lead to higher adoption rates, which leads to better code, which leads to faster delivery with more velocity and more revenue, right? It's all tied together.
John, I think it's real important at this point of the episode, as we're kind of winding this episode down, to get your advice, for the network engineer, the engineers out there that are looking to get involved related to AI, obviously, and really for technical professionals. Let me ask you this question. What's one thing that you wish you had known earlier in your career as to where things are today related to AI?
I really wish I didn't have so much imposter syndrome when I got started with AI. Even to this day, I've been very hesitant to call myself an expert in AI. Now Google developer expert. I am a Google developer expert, so I guess I kind of am. But even now, I'm a little hesitant to say that because my background wasn't computer science. Yes, I did computer programming, but I didn't do computer science. I don't have any idea what these algorithms are doing or what they mean. I don't have the mathematical background that I thought was required to break through to AI. I thought there was this mythical glass ceiling holding me back from actually, being a consumer of AI and using the tools to help my career with network automation in particular. But I thought there was this kind of mythical ceiling that you really needed to have a certain background or a certain skill set or come from a certain educational background to start using it meaningfully. And in fact, if you can do basic REST API stuff, it's accessible to you. And it's more accessible now than ever with things like MCP and things like AI agents and things like Claude Desktop and Cursor and Gemini CLI. So don't let that hold you back. If that's what's holding you back, this idea of that it's somehow more difficult than I would ever think I could tackle or figure out as a human, or, do you know what I mean, Jim? I don't know that I'm articulating this well.
You definitely are, because I was going to ask, what was a mindset shift that can help accelerate the transition? And I think to your point of saying that imposter syndrome, because even in my own experience related to artificial intelligence and working with guests and also research and talking and, doing polls and surveys and everything like that, I find a lot of that, the aspect of the imposter syndrome in there that, I can't do this AI stuff because this, that, and the other thing. And I think it's the aspect of the head trash. You've got to eliminate that because it's a whole new realm of possibilities. And until you fully try and understand exactly and you immerse yourself into these new changes, you don't know what you don't know. And I think
Right.
that's important to your point as that imposter syndrome. What are some of the practical steps that engineers, network engineers, can take right now in 2026 to stay relevant and thrive in this evolution?
Well, stay curious and be inspired and not like I think of the meme of the person looking out of one side of the bus and it's happy sunshine, and the person looking out the same bus but out the other window and it's a rocky, dark, and gloomy. You
Yeah.
have that decision to make every day, and every time you hear about artificial intelligence, to look at it as an opportunity to learn something new, or to continue to dismiss it. I can't change the hearts and minds around that. I hope my message has inspired you to be more curious and to take your first steps with these tools. But honestly, try to find that thing that could help you. I think it's an on and off switch. Once you actually see it do something of value, then it becomes valuable. Right now, artificial intelligence isn't valuable to a lot of network engineers because they haven't tried to do anything valuable with it. They chat and chat GPT for 10 or 15 minutes, and they sort of lose interest, or don't see the hype, or don't see what the big deal is. Try to do something meaningful with it, which may mean you need to write a little bit of code to get started. But you're going to be rewarded hugely. They're going to get huge rewards from jumping onto this train now, because it's moving very fast. And the longer you wait, the further away that train's going to be when you do decide, and maybe it's not your decision to make. Maybe someone's going to make the decision for you that you do have to learn AI. And you do not want to be put in that position either, right?
Yeah, you're 100% on that because, like you said, we were there at the, you don't have to go far back when that train started to get build speed. It's going to get further away. It's going to be moving really fast, like a bullet train, right? The other thing too, if you're going to wait until a company, your leader of your team, or maybe the company is saying, hey, we want you to upscale, we want you to move into this role, you're going to be not in a good position. To your point, you got to take the initiative and embrace it and move forward with it, because really, John, I mean, this whole episode, what you've laid out here is that the future really belongs to those who can orchestrate, not just operate. Operate is the past, orchestrate is the future. So I really appreciate you laying everything out on this role changes that are happening, the evolution, and also too, like you said, the speed of that train when it comes to AI augmentation for engineers. To close out this episode, I really view that there needs to be that human AI partnership. It needs to really, I think it has started, but I just want to just say formally that it must happen. It must start now. Because when you think about it, an engineer's role isn't disappearing, they're not fading away, they're evolving, and they're evolving upward. It's a rapid, accelerated evolution, and evolution happens no matter what. You either grow or you don't grow and you fade away. And also, AI is a force multiplier for human expertise. And what I mean by that is it's going to augment you. It's not going to replace you. Yes, it's going to replace those repetitive tasks and things like that. You said it earlier. It's those who can really take that AI and do creative things with it and make it do unique things and things that are important to a business or to an organization or a government. That's super important. And I guess my last question for you is, we're talking about a vision that's, high performance with these AI orchestrated teams. What do you think it's going to look like in the next, let's say, 5 years?
Well, 5 years, I think that the teams I don't think they're going to be smaller. I think they're going to be very different, though. I think the way we approach solving problems is going to be agentic first very soon. And there's going to be sort of a holding pattern on, let's say, expanding human teams, right? So in 5 years, 70-80% of infrastructure is going to be augmented by artificial intelligence. I think we're going to have an exponentially larger number of data centers around the world, and neo clouds and different type of cloud providers. I think there's going to be more specialized models. I think we might see more custom models that are maybe vendor supported. Maybe the vendors of the world put out their own language models to give us an even better way to interface with systems through natural language. I think MCP is going to lead to a lot in the next year. I think A to A, agent to agent communication, is going to lead to a lot more. I think that the whole idea of agentic infrastructure is going to dwarf the World Wide Web. I think it might actually be the first thing to embrace IPv6, where agents are given their own IP address, or agents can participate in the routing protocols, where your neighbor might be an AI agent. And by neighbor, I mean your BGP neighbor or your OSPF neighbor, where the agents can actually peer with routers and have even better insights and make even better decisions on routing. So I don't dismiss anything. I think that right on the hardware that you get of the future, the servers of the future, the routers of the future, they will likely have GPUs or TPUs or DPUs, small little purpose-driven pieces of hardware that let those routers themselves have a natural language interface, right? So I see the proliferation of natural language across, and maybe we started on the CLI, right? The CLI is dead, long live the CLI. Maybe we actually will break away from the shackles of the CLI in the next 5 years and move into a purely natural language driven infrastructure.
Very good. John, how can people follow you, communicate, connect with you?
Yeah, sure. So I've started something called the VibeOps Forum, and this is all we do is share AI ideas and share code. We don't call each other's work slop. It's a safe, inclusive space that you can reach out, and I'm always in there. LinkedIn is a good place to find me. Twitter, X is a good place to find me. My YouTube channel's always got something interesting on there. And I love and cherish connecting with people from all around the world. And so feel free to reach out to me.
Beautiful, beautiful. And if you could do me a favor after we're done with this session, if you could send me the links that you want me to provide, and then I'll put that into not only onto the Digital Revolution YouTube channel, but also obviously in the audio podcast description for this episode.
All right.
All right, John, thank you so much. I greatly appreciate you being on the revolution. And everyone, please continue to stay curious, informed, and also always continue to check in with the digital revolution. Thank you, everyone.